Ladies and gentlemen, we all face moments in life where it feels like the weight of the world is resting on our shoulders. We're carrying burdens that seem too heavy to bear, and we are running ourselves into the ground trying to fix things to make it all work. We tell ourselves, if I just try harder, if I just control this situation a little bit more, I can make everything turn out right. But let me tell you something, sometimes the very act of holding on too tightly is the thing that's preventing you from receiving the freedom you were meant to have. What would happen if you let go? What if instead of clinging to every detail of your life, you surrendered it to a power much greater than your own? What if you let go of your desire to control and trusted in a plan that you can't always see but know is there? Leaving it to God isn't about giving up, it's about trusting that He has it under control, even when we can't see the way forward. It's about understanding that our need for control can be a heavy burden, and that real peace comes when we release that weight. There's freedom in letting go. When you let go of your need to hold on to everything, to micromanage every outcome, you open yourself up to a life filled with possibilities you never even imagined. It's in that space when you release your grasp that God's power takes over. When you surrender, you make room for God to do what only He can do. I know how difficult it is to wait. I know the impatience that comes with not seeing the answer right away. But God's timing is perfect, and His ways are not our ways. He doesn't operate on the same schedule we do. His plan is so much bigger, so much grander than anything we could imagine for ourselves. When you leave it to God, you are walking in trust. You're trusting that His timing is better than your timing. You're trusting that even in the waiting, God is working things out for you. It might not look the way you expected. It might not come when you want it to, but trust me, God will show up in ways that leave you in awe. Now, I know that sometimes we doubt, we fear. We wonder if God really sees us or if He's forgotten about us. But here's the truth: doubt and fear can't coexist with faith. When you trust in God's promises, when you lean into His truth, fear and doubt begin to lose their power over you. God has not abandoned you. He is working on your behalf, even when you can't see it yet. And every promise He made is yes and amen. Here's what's beautiful: leaving it to God doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are strong enough to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't have it all figured out, but I know who holds the answers. I know who holds my future. There's strength in vulnerability. When we admit that we are not in control, we make room for God's strength to move in and through us in ways we could never have imagined. And here's the biggest thing: God's plan for you is so much bigger than anything you could plan for yourself. His vision for your life is beyond your understanding. The dreams you have are not even the full picture. He has greater things in store for you than you could ever ask or think. So today I challenge you to take a step of faith. Release the burden you've been carrying. Trust in God's process, His plan, His timing. Walk with faith, knowing that when you leave it to God, you are walking in alignment with His purpose for your life. When you leave it to God, you are saying, I trust you, and that is where true peace begins. There are moments in life when everything seems to be spiraling out of control and we feel the weight of the world on our shoulders. The pressure to make things work, to fix everything, can be overwhelming. We convince ourselves that if we just try harder, work longer, and push a little more, we can handle it all. But what happens when that constant striving leaves us exhausted, worn thin, and still no closer to the peace we desperately long for? The truth is, we weren't made to carry that kind of weight. We weren't designed to hold the burden of trying to control every aspect of our lives. The act of surrendering, letting go, and trusting can seem terrifying at first. It's hard to release the reins, especially when everything in us is wired to keep pushing, fixing, and controlling. But what if I told you that surrender isn't weakness? What if surrender is actually the most powerful thing you can do? When you surrender, you stop fighting a battle you were never meant to fight. You stop wrestling with the unknown, and instead you release it to the one who holds the future. There's power in letting go, power in trusting that there is a greater plan unfolding, even when you can't see it yet. The moment you let go of your need to control, you step into a realm of peace and strength that only God can provide. It's the moment when you stop trying to do everything in your own strength and realize that you don't have to have it all figured out. The burden isn't on you to make everything work. This isn't about stepping away from responsibility or ignoring the challenges in your life. It's about recognizing that there is a force greater than your own understanding, a power that is working for your good, even when you can't comprehend it. Surrender is not giving up, it's giving over to something higher, something far beyond your own grasp. And in doing so, you open yourself up to a new kind of freedom. Imagine living your life without the constant need to control every situation, every outcome. Imagine walking through your days knowing that even in the midst of uncertainty, you are not alone. When you let go, you are making space for God to move in your life in ways that will leave you in awe. It's in the surrender that His strength becomes your strength, His timing becomes your timing, and His will becomes your path. This is the power of surrender, of release that opens the door to a future you never could have planned on your own. We live in a world that tells us we must be in control. From the moment we wake up until the time we go to bed, we are taught that success comes from managing every detail, solving every problem, and having every answer at our fingertips. The pressure to have everything under control is everywhere. We feel it in our work, in our relationships, in our dreams, and in our daily lives. The fear of things slipping through our fingers or falling apart can be paralyzing. But here's the truth: when we hold on too tightly to the reins of control, we actually find ourselves weighed down, burdened by the very things we are trying to fix. The more we cling, the heavier it becomes. The more we push, the more resistance we face. We think that by micromanaging every situation, every outcome, we're keeping things safe, that we are securing our future. But the reality is that we're not just holding on, we're holding ourselves back. We're carrying a weight that was never meant for us to carry. And the harder we try to control it all, the more exhausted we become. It's like trying to swim upstream, constantly fighting against the current, hoping to reach the shore, but only finding ourselves further away from peace. What would it look like to take a breath, to step back, and to acknowledge that we don't have to carry all of that weight, that the world won't fall apart if we let go of the illusion of control? The truth is, when we try to control everything, we miss out on the power of release. We miss out on the freedom that comes from trusting that not everything is our responsibility. We don't need to know every step. We don't have to have everything figured out. In fact, the more we try to keep everything tightly wound in our grip, the more we lose sight of the bigger picture. I'm not saying that we should be passive or give up on our goals, no, but there is a difference between managing with wisdom and exhausting ourselves with the need to control every detail. Life will challenge us our way, unexpected turns and twists we never saw coming. The question is, are we going to hold on so tightly that we miss what's unfolding in front of us, or will we trust that the one who holds it all in his hands knows exactly what he's doing? When you release your need to control, you open yourself to a life that isn't dictated by fear or anxiety. You stop carrying the weight of perfection, the burden of getting everything just right. Instead, you trust that whatever happens, you are not alone in it, that God has your back. You begin to understand that the weight of control was never yours to bear, and the freedom that comes with releasing that weight is unlike anything you've ever known. In letting go, you create space for new possibilities, for growth, for peace. So ask yourself, what have you been holding on to too tightly? What have you been trying to control only to? There is something incredibly freeing about the moment we let go. It's almost like taking a deep breath after holding it for far too long, realizing you can breathe freely again. For so long, we've been taught that control equals safety, that holding on tightly to the things we fear losing is the only way to ensure they stay. But what if true freedom doesn't come from holding on? What if it comes from releasing? What if letting go of the things that weigh us down is the very thing that opens us up to the life we've been longing for? When we release the need to control, we make space for peace to enter our hearts. It's as though we've been carrying a heavy load, trying to juggle our worries, our doubts, our fears, and yet no matter how hard we try, it never seems to lighten. We carry the weight of expectations, not just from others, but from ourselves, pushing and pushing to make things work out according to our own plans. But what happens when we finally stop fighting against the current, stop trying to push everything into place? That's when the true freedom begins. In that space, when we surrender, we realize that we've been bound by chains that we could have released all along. We've been living under the illusion that if we let go, everything will fall apart. But the opposite is true. It's only when we let go that we realize we are not meant to carry the burden of control. We were never meant to do this alone. The freedom comes in trusting that the creator of the universe has a plan for us, and his plan is always greater, always better than anything we could create in our own limited understanding. The freedom in letting go doesn't mean walking away from responsibility. It means acknowledging that we don't have to have all the answers, and that's okay. It's the courage to say, I trust that something bigger than me is at work here. It's in that trust that we find rest, because we're no longer chained to the weight of perfection or the need to figure everything out. Instead, we walk in the peace of knowing that even in the unknown, we are being guided, we are being loved, we are being taken care of in ways we can't even imagine. It's in the act of letting go that we begin to understand that life isn't about us controlling every detail, every moment, but about allowing ourselves to be part of a much larger story. We stop trying to micromanage our way into happiness, and instead we open ourselves to the joy that comes from trusting in something much greater. When we let go of the outcomes, we free ourselves to live fully in the moment, to experience life as it unfolds, to embrace what comes with open arms rather than a clenched fist. This freedom is transformative. It is the kind of freedom that invites growth, that opens us up to new possibilities. It's the kind of freedom that lets us stop living in the past, constantly replaying what went wrong, or in the future, anxiously waiting for what might go wrong. Instead, we are free to step into the present, to trust that where we are right now is exactly where we're meant to be. And when we stop fighting against life, when we stop trying to force it to bend to our will, we find that everything we need was already there, waiting for us to notice. There's a truth we often forget in the hustle and rush of life, the truth that everything happens in its own time. We live in a world that moves at lightning speed, where we're constantly measuring success by how quickly we can get to the next step, the next mole, the next milestone. But sometimes in our frantic pursuit, we forget that there is a rhythm to life, a divine timing that unfolds in ways we might not always understand. And what if I told you that the moments we feel the most frustrated by when we're waiting, when things aren't happening as quickly as we hoped, are the moments where God is doing the most work in us? It's hard to wait, isn't it? It's hard when you've prayed, when you've hoped, when you've worked hard for something, and yet it seems like nothing is moving. The plans you've made feel like they're on hold. The dreams you've nurtured seem out of reach, and the waiting becomes unbearable. But here's the thing, God's timing is never late. It's not even a little bit late. It's always perfect. And it's always in alignment with His purpose for your life. It may not align with your timeline, but it always aligns with His. And His timing is far more powerful and more beautiful than anything we could orchestrate ourselves. Trusting in God's timing means surrendering our need to control the when, the how, and the what. It's letting go of the idea that we know best and allowing God to move us forward at the right moment. Sometimes we feel as though we should have arrived at a certain place by now. We look around and see others moving forward and we wonder why it's taking us so long. But God isn't concerned with the pace of the world. He's concerned with the pace of your heart, the strength of your faith, and the depth of your trust in Him. There are moments in life where the waiting feels unbearable, when we question why things haven't happened yet, why doors haven't opened the way we thought they would. And it's in those moments that God is shaping us, refining us, preparing us for what lies ahead. It's like a seed that must grow in the soil before it can sprout into a beautiful flower. It has to go through its own process. And sometimes we don't realize it, but we are in the middle of our own growth process, becoming stronger, wiser, and more equipped for the future that God is preparing us for. When we trust in God's timing, we release the anxiety of rushing ahead. We begin to understand that the delays, the pauses, the moments where it seems like nothing is happening are not signs of failure. They are part of the process. We begin to trust that what God has for us will come at just the right time, and when it does, it will be more beautiful, more perfect, and more fulfilling than anything we could have imagined. That job, that relationship, that breakthrough, they are on their way, but they are coming in God's time, not ours. And even in those moments of waiting, we find peace, because we no longer have to live in the uncertainty of whether or not it's all going to work out. We've made the choice to trust that God is working behind the scenes. He's moving in ways we can't always see, opening doors at exactly the right moment. His ways are higher, His thoughts are deeper, and His plans for us are greater than we could ever plan for ourselves. So the next time you find yourself impatient, frustrated by the wait, remember that God's timing is always perfect. Trust that He's orchestrating something far beyond your understanding. He's not just preparing the blessing, He's preparing you for the blessing. The moment you let go of your need to rush, to make things happen on your own timeline, is the moment you step into the peace that only comes from trusting in His perfect plan. When it's time, it will happen. And when it does, you'll see that it was worth every second of the wait. Fear and doubt have a way of creeping into our hearts when we least expect it. They begin as small whispers, but over time they grow louder, taking up more space in our minds, clouding our judgment, and making us question everything we once believed. They feed on our insecurities, telling us that we're not enough, that we're not worthy, that we can't handle what's ahead. And when fear and doubt take root, they paralyze us, leaving us stuck in a cycle of second guessing and uncertainty. But here's the truth: fear and doubt are not our natural state. They are the enemy of faith. They are the distractions that keep us from moving forward into the promises that God has set before us. And the only way to truly break free from them is to release them completely and without hesitation. I know how powerful fear can be. It's that feeling that rises in your chest when you're faced with something unknown, when the future feels uncertain, when you wonder if you have what it takes. It's the voice that tells you you can't do this, you're not prepared, you're not strong enough. But here's what I want you to remember: fear is a liar. It's an illusion that thrives on your hesitation and holds you back from your full potential. Fear wants to keep you small, to keep you stuck in the safety of what you know, even if that means missing out on the incredible things God has in store for you. In doubt? Doubt is just fear disguised as wisdom. It's the voice that tells you that you don't deserve success, that God's promises are not for you, that others might be worthy of greatness, but you're not. Doubt whispers that maybe this time God won't come through for you, that maybe you'll be left to figure it all out on your own. But doubt, like fear, is rooted in a lack of trust. And the moment we choose to trust, the moment we choose to believe that God is bigger than our fears and stronger than our doubts, we begin to reclaim the peace that has always been ours. Releasing fear and doubt doesn't mean that they won't show up. It just means that they no longer have the power to control us. It's choosing to trust that God's promises are true even when everything around us seems uncertain. It's standing firm in the belief that He will make a way even when we can't see it yet. It's the courage to step forward even when the path isn't clear, knowing that we are not walking alone. And in that moment, we find a strength we didn't know we had. We find the kind of peace that isn't shaken by the storms of life. When we choose to release fear, we give space for faith to rise. We stop living in the what ifs and start living in the certainty of who God is. His word tells us that He has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That's the truth we need to hold on to when fear tries to convince us otherwise. We are not powerless. We are not abandoned. We are equipped with everything we need to face whatever comes our way. There's a powerful misconception that strength means having it all together, that we have to appear invincible in order to be seen as capable or successful. Society often tells us that vulnerability is a sign of weakness, that if we show our true selves, the parts of us that are fragile, unsure, or broken will somehow be less than. We fear that if we open up, if we allow ourselves to be seen as imperfect, we'll be judged, rejected, or thought of as incapable. But what if I told you that true strength is found in the very act of vulnerability? That in opening ourselves up and admitting we don't have all the answers, we actually tap into a deeper, more enduring power? The strength in vulnerability is something we often overlook. We think that showing our struggles, our fears, or our uncertainties is something to be ashamed of. But vulnerability isn't about weakness, it's about courage. It takes incredible bravery to let your guard down and say, I need help, or I don't have it all figured out. It's a moment of raw honesty. And in that moment, we invite growth, healing, and connection. We invite the grace of God to work in ways we never thought possible. When we embrace our vulnerability, we open the door to transformation. We stop pretending to be perfect and allow ourselves to be human. And in that humanness, we find the very strength that we thought we had to hide. As we embrace the strength found in vulnerability, release our fears and doubts, trust in God's perfect timing, and surrender the weight of control, we begin to live not as perfected versions of ourselves, but as authentic, courageous individuals walking in the freedom and grace God has designed for us. The moment we let go, we make room for something bigger than ourselves to move in our lives. We allow God's love to flow freely, unimpeded by our fear of weakness or imperfection. It's in that place of surrender where we choose trust over control, faith over fear, and authenticity over perfection that we find our truest strength. So today, let go. Let go of the need to have all the answers, to be everything for everyone, and simply trust that in the hands of God, you are exactly where you need to be. The strength you seek is not in perfection, it's in the beautiful, powerful, and real act of surrendering it all to Him. And when you do, you will step into a life full of peace, purpose, and an unwavering confidence that God's plan for you is greater than anything you could ever imagine.